We're basically to help and assist in terms of our bursary application process. So this particularly relates to our own call for individual artists and not really for like Arts Council or other award streams, although what you may hear today might help you with those applications as well. I'm Jenny Sherwin, the Arts Officer, for those of you who don't know me. Sheila Stewart is also on the call, and we have Clarke joining us as one of our panellists today, and Shane Finan also joining us as a panellist today. Ali and Shane are going to share a bit of their experience directly in relation to applying for funding. They would also have applied to this award previously. So it's the idea is that they get to talk to you really artist to artist around their hints, tips and tricks and you know, processes that they've done, projects that they've done arising from grant funding. For my own piece, Sheila's going to share on the screen really shortly just some information around our process, just that you can refer to. If anybody has any questions at any time, just put them in the chat because Sheila can answer as we go. And also we'll hold all the questions until the end of the 3 speakers sessions. Don't worry if you don't get down everything that's being said. There's going to be an account, so the questions that we get asked here today will all be collated and they'll be put back up on the website or emailed out to you directly via Eventbrite. So there is that, if you're making notes and feel like you just like you know, you've missed something, we will provide that service, that the questions will be all summed up and publicly available as well, for people who attend this session and also people who don't. Just to say, we know it's very hard to apply for funding. You know, the time it takes, the investment in your practice and trying to line up your goals with other people's strategic plans can be difficult. We recognize that, and also that it is unfortunately a competitive context, you know, so that sometimes you might feel you made a really brilliant application, but that you know, there might be 40 or 50 other applicants in the field, and we do understand that that is challenging. So just to frame everything we say with that, and we always appreciate the time it takes artists to apply to us. We deliberately, just to let you know, have an independent panel, so I don't sit on the panel assessment. Karen Thompson here, who's also on the call. Karen might wave. Yeah, Karen is here, so that we're also not even answering artist questions. That's so that Karen can be a little bit more independent and give the same time to each question that she receives. And Karen manages the process of these applications, and an independent panel adjudicates. Of course, I'm there in the background, but the panel is completely independent and I don't have a scoring role. So just to let you know that as well. Sheila, you might just pop up the slide there, that, and we might just start then. Now, so we can go to the next one there. Yeah, so I suppose the Artist Award Scheme, not every local authority has the same grant award scheme. Ours was, we decided to make an individual artist award with its particular criteria in 2013. It's part of a number of things that we do in this area in County Wicklow for artists. So we would have other mentorships, bursaries, coaching opportunities. So this is just one of the opportunities that we provide. So part of this award scheme also, like a lot of you will develop your own practice, but then that practice gets fed back into the county. So we recognise that artists leading applications in their own right and for their own work are really also beneficial to the overall ecology in the county. Okay, so the purpose of our scheme is really to support the development and creation of new work, whether that's virtual, digital or in physical spaces, and other kind of testing out other research methodologies or shifting your practice from one focus you've had to another. All of that can be supported. As part of that, you can integrate time for thinking, testing, and doing. I suppose that's a translation of that one. And also increasing your network. So moving beyond maybe people that you know or have known within your practice and working with new artists or in fields of interest or research, all of that is possible to apply for. Part of what we do can also lead to the creation of new work. And within the development of that new work, it also covers within your budget when you're sorting it out. It also covers funding your time in developing that new work. Next there, Sheila. Thanks. So eligible artists, so artists at all career stages, native or resident in County Wicklow. That means if you've been born here and you're living outside the county, or you're working in the county, or sorry, you're living in the county currently for more than 3 years, you can make an application to the scheme. Any discipline, so you know, whether it's in circus, theatre, animation, performance, or any discipline within those art forms, you're eligible to apply for the scheme. And any career stage as well, just to say, if you're emerging mid-career or practicing for a long time, the scheme doesn't differentiate between any of those kind of the career length or duration or point. It's completely open in that respect. So that I give you maximum time to ask questions and listen to Shane and Ali. I'm just going to take you through, rather than going through all the detail that's on our website, which includes the guidelines and just more kind of succinct descriptions of what you can actually apply for. A lot of people, when they're making applications to us, the key thing would be any challenges or difficulties that we receive are often in terms of the budget. So sometimes people don't, they put in all their expenditure, but they don't put in their income, or they'll put in a project that has unconfirmed income to a large amount and we're not sure if it can be delivered. So just to run through a really quick budget template again, which will be available afterwards, to give you an example. So if you were looking for a grant from Wicklow County Council for €3,000, the Arts Council were contributing 1,000, and you'd other grant income from either your own resources, because your other employment or any income you receive can also be used in terms of valid income there, listed, whether that's basic income for artists or any other type of income that you receive is valid there and can be listed. And then basically what you ask for us for is the balance. So the projected income overall for the project here you'll see is 5,000, and the total income you're anticipating from Wicklow County Council by applying to us is 3,000. So again, just ensuring that all of that adds up to the correct amount. So this is kind of the type of expenditure. It's not the only expenditure. You can also add lines if you see that they're not here. And also it's really important that you fill in this template on and follow this format. If you find that, say, within film, for example, a lot of the budgets can be much more complex and need a lot more detail, what you do is put in all the summary detail here, and then you can say, please refer to the full budget, but don't leave this blank and submit a different version of a budget document. Always, you know, sum it up in the form that the format that we have, and then add your deep dive budget as a separate document. But as I say, don't skip this section. It's really important so that we can do send summative details to the panelists who will be assessing it. Again, clarity is really important here. Sample costs here that Sheila have put in across wages and salaries. It could be admin costs, it could be the cost of marketing and PR for a project or initiative, equipment hire. We don't allow capital costs, so anything here should be related to the project. So that's really important too. And again, just make sure your totals are correct. And then in the next slide, Sheila, always make, sorry, that's gone on, but always make sure that your income and expenditure balance off. So if your income overall is 3,000 euro without us, and then you need 2,000 from us, make sure that your expenditure total and your income total match, and that you ask us for a really clear 2,000 euro then. Do you know what I mean? So again, the main takeaway is if it's not developed enough there, please fill in the summary template and refer to a deeper budget afterwards, but don't not include this budget template that's within the application process within your submission. The next, Sheila. So how to apply, read all the documentation carefully, allow enough time. There's a lot of this stuff that you can prepare, say this week, even if you feel, well, I'm still hatching my idea and I'm not totally clear on the budget, and you know what I mean, it's going to take me a few more days or weeks to percolate that. Do get all the easy stuff ready now. Like, you know, your CV is your CV, get it prepared. You know, your collaborators, if you're collaborating, start to gather their detail. So there's a lot you can do rather than leaving it all to the last week when you're going to put in the submission. Do make sure that you submit everything we ask for, the budget and the application form and any further detail that we've asked for. If you're providing us with supporting documentation, which is required, please try, insofar as possible, to collate that into one document and submit it. So for example, like if you have 5 images for your practice, it's much easier if those 5 images are on one PDF. You know, when we're sending that information out to a panel, even if all the CVs and all the information can be collated into one document, whatever version that document is, a PDF, a Word document, a presentation document, you know, provided it's within the upload limit, like, so as in provided the web frame, it's not, the memory of it isn't too big that it can't be uploaded. And again, that's something to check, whether you have to compress your documents ahead of time, maybe just allow a bit of time to do that as well in advance. The main things we see are sometimes, you know, challenges with receiving applications are that they don't make a compelling argument all the way through, so that their idea might be for a project, but that doesn't relate back to their CV or their past experience, or if there's a gap, like if you're developing something new, that you don't make a natural link back to the work that came before. So what a panel's looking to do is get a really compelling argument, so that whatever, in every section of the application you make, it's not new news that people are reading. You're making a consistent, compelling argument for whatever it is you want to do, so that your narrative all the way through should be consistent. You know, your artistic statement, for example, shouldn't be a generic one that you've had, you know, maybe in the last year. It should be really relevant to the context that you're applying for. And it shouldn't, like, a panel shouldn't be trying to make leaps and assumptions about either budget and how a project can be achieved, nor should they be, you know, anything that, any kind of information that you can box off that makes it really clear what you're asking for, that you have the ability to do it, that you have the track record and the experience, and that this is the ask on this occasion. You know, that's what we find is the easiest for a panel to form, you know, to be at to achieve consistency, for a panel to make a decision on a candidate. We do accept, and it is really difficult, it is a competitive context. So what we try to say to people is do follow the guidelines and follow this process. But sometimes, you know, it won't be always possible to give really in-depth feedback to candidates after an application. So just to bear that in mind as well. So I'm going to hand over now to Ali, if that's okay. The application deadline, to remind everyone, is the 27th of February at 4 o'clock. Karen here, who's waved at us already, wave at us again, Karen. Karen is there and can answer any questions. And again, you know, keep your questions to the end and keep them coming in the chat all the way through, and I'll do the Q&A at the end.
Hi everyone, my name is Ali Clarke. I'm a choreographer of dance and circus, and I'm based in Bray. I also am the co-director of a company called EICM, which is based down in Cork, and we work on research, publication, and policy advice within cultural management. So part of that is also offering some workshops and classes in production, like this, advice on application processes and whatnot. So I have a couple of little hints and tricks that I wanted to share today, and Wicklow Arts Office were kind enough to invite me to share a little bit. But before I do that, just to share a little bit of my own experience with the Wicklow Arts Office. So for 2021 and 2022, I also did this application process and was lucky enough to receive some funding from the Artist Award. The first one in 2021 was allowing me to do some research with the community in Tinahely. So that was a lot of interviewing, working together then with two collaborative artists, interviewing community members, and then moving on to artistic interpretations of some things that they were touching on. So through this process was where we came to the concept for the piece, which happened in 2022. It was a commission from the courthouse in Tinahely, but then I applied to the Wicklow Arts Office to augment that original commission to give me one more week with the artists. And as we all know, one extra week of creation or rehearsal, it made a huge difference. So I've been sitting here in the clinic the last 2 years, picking up little bits of information and reading the guidelines and sending in my own applications. My own experience with this funding was that it was incredibly supportive. They try as hard as they can to get to everyone and give as much funding as they can to a wide range of different artists. So working with dance and circus in a rural enough community in Tinahely is not so common. So to be able to be given that opportunity to bring dance to then the community who honestly had never seen contemporary dance, they didn't know what they were coming to see. They were mostly just shocked that we weren't wearing ballet shoes. I think that was really quite special, and it really gave us the opportunity then to build a relationship with the community and with the Arts Centre down in Tinahely, which is going to continue. We already have plans for this year and also for 2024. So what Jenny was saying about building your network through this award is also, I think, a really significant part of your opportunity within the Wicklow Arts Council Artist Award. I'm going to just share a really little slide. I don't really like sharing too much info on the screen as I talk, but there's some links here and some names that I think it would be great for you to be able to jot down as you go. So I've kind of listed here my two most important things when I'm writing an application and when I'm assisting someone else in writing an application. These are the two main things that I think about. The first one is something that my English teacher said to me in secondary school, and at the time I thought it was the most ridiculous thing anyone ever told me, to answer the question asked. And it really annoyed me at the time, but now it's become kind of my motto when I'm making applications. So we get these guidelines, and sometimes we skim through them, sometimes we read them a few times, but the guidelines are literally telling you what you need to tell the panel. They're telling you everything you need to know. And the first more obvious reason that we need to be careful is obviously not to get refused the funding based on a technical error, forgetting to add a CV, forgetting to fill in the budget, something very simple, which we all know, but we also all make that mistake. We've all done it. I've done it. I've been refused because I forgot someone's CV. So it's for that reason, but even more so, those guidelines hold all of the gold dust that we need in that application. If you're reading through an application, for example, and it states, okay, we're looking for ambitious, high quality proposals of presentations for the public from emerging to established artists. Within my application, then I'm going to use the word ambitious, use the word high quality, mention that I'm emerging or established artist. And that's not some sort of a trick. It's literally trying to flag for the panel where I'm showing them what they need to see, because it's a lot of words and they're going to read a lot of applications in one day. And if we make it kind of a game of hide and seek, there's a chance that your answer to the question won't be found. But if you can very clearly state and mark out, here is where I tell you why it's ambitious, and here is where I state why it's high quality, here is where I state why my collaborators are high quality, then you don't run that risk of important information being missed. So I think that's the most important thing for me, is to really open the guidelines. Either sometimes I print them off, sometimes I'll open them in Adobe and I'll literally highlight all of those buzzwords. And then when I'm working on maybe the second or third draft of my application text, I'll try and include some of those important words just to flag out, this is why my proposal is feasible, etc., etc. And it just really helps me to make sure I've answered the questions, and also the panel to very quickly be able to say, oh yes, she checks all the boxes, not because I used the right words, but because I flagged the points where I'm making that statement. So that's there at the top. The second one, where I've written to use concrete language. This is something that, reading this book here, How to Write About Contemporary Art, it's a book by Gilda Williams. It's not about application writing. It's really about writing about critical writing about art, or writing artistic statements and that sort of work. But she has a couple of chapters there writing about your art in concrete terms, using concrete nouns and not getting so abstract, because as artists, we think we want to be poetic with our language and beautiful, but actually the more concrete and simple and clear we make our work, the easier it is to read that line through your application. So it sounds really babied, but to say this proposal will enable me to do X, Y, and Z. This research or this work is important in my career at this stage because this, really making it clear, concise, so that the panel don't have to try and figure out what you're trying to tell them. It's clear, it's there. It might not feel the most artistic to write like this, but it just makes those misunderstandings much less frequent, and you can really control the narrative as well. You're telling them what you want, you're telling them why you want it, and you're telling them what result it will have for you, for your career, for that project. Basically just making the panel's job easier. They want to give you the funding. They just need you to say the right thing. And the right thing is, why do I want this? What is it going to do for me? And why is that result important? Rather than hiding those things or trying to be artistic about it, we're being clear. And clarity, I think, is probably the most important thing in your application. Then the last thing I've done is include a couple of resources down here at the bottom, which are just websites, which are going to make the technical side of application writing a lot more simple. Canva here at the top is, it's a graphic design website. It's free and it's really easy to build your portfolio. Building up dossiers, making it look a little bit nicer than a Word document. Of course, the aesthetics of your application are going to reflect your artistic ambition as well. So we want it to kind of reflect us as an artist and as a person. flowcv.io is a really interesting website where you can fill in all of your information for your CV and then put it into different templates. So each CV has the same information, but you can make it look different with each application. So if I'm working on an artwork which is a bit darker and moodier, or it's for children, I can change the aesthetic of it. Last one then is pdf.co, and here you can compress your PDF files. So for those of you who maybe have a PDF which is too big and doesn't fit into the allowed size, you can compress it really quickly and easily with websites like this. And then you can send all of your documents in one PDF and there's no confusion. It's much more difficult or much easier to not forget something. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share today. And it's really about clarity, about flagging in your own application where you've answered the questions so the panel don't have to search and dig through your application. It's really clear on one reading. Same thing with the concrete language, making it very clear what you want to do and why you want to do it is way more important than making it sound beautiful. They sound really simple things, but I've read enough applications to know that it's very easy to get lost in your own artistic world and forget that there's people reading it who don't know you. So the last thing I'll say is, if you can, before you send in your application, have someone who doesn't know you and your artistic work read your application and tell you what they think you're doing. Because sometimes it's very clear to us what the application says, and then someone else reads it and they say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what this project is at all. So yeah, if you can get someone to read it before you send it in, I would highly suggest doing this. This book by Gilda Williams is a really great read if you're looking to write more about your art. And best of luck. I think it's a brilliant opportunity to have this for all of us artists in Wicklow, and it's incredible to see so many artists here today. So I wish you all the best of luck, and I really hope that your projects go to plan regardless. Thank you very much. I'll pass on to Shane now.
Thanks, Ali. That's super advice, and really clear. I'm kind of regretting going second now because I don't know if I have anything left to add. But no, I'm gonna introduce myself a little bit as well, like Ali did, and then I'm going to speak a little bit also about preparing applications, what I've done from my own side, and the idea of building a narrative into how you construct the story that you're telling to the panel who's reviewing what you're doing. So I assemble artworks as a visual artist in most cases, using different media, mixed media installation artists in most cases. And I also run and manage projects. So like Ali, and I suppose like a lot of artists, I kind of dip toes into a lot of different areas. When I run and manage projects, they're usually with collaborative projects, working with other artists as well. I was also, like Ali, awarded funding in 2021 and 2022 from Wicklow Arts Office Act Arts funding. So I was very lucky, and I'm very grateful for that in both cases. And I'm going to speak a little bit about the first of the two applications, just as a way of talking through building up narrative. And in my broader arts practice, I've also won funding from Creative Europe, the Arts Council of Ireland, a couple of other arts offices around the country, and have worked on the projects that were funded by Decade of St Henry's, the Wellcome Trust, and universities, university funding. So I kind of have an experience of like working as an artist from a funding point of view, and like working with like public bodies. So I understand that. I've also a couple of times sat on the other side of a panel, so I have read CVs that have been handed in, so I have a little bit of a kind of understanding of that, but never for a public body. So I'm not going to speak directly to that, but I will say one or two little things about just CVs. So it's only 10 minutes, and I think that the most important thing as well is that we have enough time for Q&A, so I'm not going to speak a huge amount about this. So in 2021, so yeah, okay, so I suppose overall you apply with materials, and that's what Ali was just speaking to. So when we apply as artists, and we all apply as artists to this like invisible, opaque thing that is some public body, whatever that is, the Arts Council or Wicklow Arts Office in this case, or some other body, and then we hold our breaths and wait, and then 6 months later you get a rejection letter and your heart drops to the floor. And we all know this, like anybody who's done this, you know this feeling, and it's gutting, and it's very difficult to take that type of rejection, and especially over and over again. But it's also a part of being an artist. One thing I would say, and this is the only thing I was going to say from sitting the other side of a panel, is that having like seen a lot of artists apply with CVs and portfolios and so on, and this is, I'm sure anybody on the panel who's ever sat on a panel for Wicklow Arts Office or anywhere else would say this, there are so many great artists making so much good stuff all the time. And the stuff that gets put in front of you, it's very difficult to choose between. And I know that the panel have a difficult decision to make when these things come in. But it's also, it's something that I've learned to kind of like, as a consolation for myself, when I do get that rejection letter, is that I always know that somebody somewhere is making great art and has gotten an acceptance letter that same day. And it's nice to know that this happens, because I think it kind of takes away a little bit of the guttiness of knowing that your project isn't going to get funded that way. I'm saying that in advance. Hopefully you'll all get funded, and that would be amazing, but you know yourself, it's probably not always going to be like that. So you apply with materials, and you put together the materials as well as possible. Your CV, your portfolio, etc., etc., and the application text. I also say, and this is something that Jenny was alluding to, you should also prepare any extra materials that you might need for an application as early as possible. I actually, just before this call, I was on the phone to an organization that I'm hoping to work with in the next year, that I just asking for a letter of support from them for another application that I'm putting together. I'm no longer based in Wicklow, actually, so I'm not applying for this round. But there's another organisation, and I wanted this letter of support because those letters of support are really valuable. They show that you're contacting other organisations, you're trying to work with other people, you want to expand your practice, you want to reach out. Don't leave that to the last minute. Don't do that on the 26th of February. Don't do anything on the 26th of February, actually, if you can avoid it. Like, try and make sure that this application is handed in as early as possible. That would be like, I mean, that's kind of crucial, but prepare, absolutely prepare what materials you need and really think through what is it that you're looking to apply for and why do you need the money? This is public money. What are you going to do with it when you get it? How is it going to benefit you as an artist, or how is it going to benefit like some expanded arts practice? We're all different, but the review process is the same. So whoever is going to be reviewing, they're going to look and they want to see that you're going to do something good with that money. You're also going to do something good for yourself. So yeah, it's tricky. And Ali made like a lot of very good points there about making sure that you keep clarity in your language as you put together your application. I think also keeping a clarity in the messaging of what you want to say is extremely important. And that's what I was just going to speak to. So when you apply, you're going to write a text. I think I have the application form open here. I was just having a look at it yesterday. And I also read through a couple of my old applications over the last couple of weeks as this was coming up, just to try and remind myself what it was that went right and what it was that went wrong in applications that didn't go ahead. And you see that there's like a summary and write details about your project. These areas here, these are an opportunity to start to explore or explain what it is that you want to do. That text is extremely important. Kind of going back to the point that like you're all great artists and there's going to be a whole load of people who will hand in a really good CV and portfolio. So what you say about what you're looking to do, it's extremely important. And as Ali said, it should be clear, but it should also tell something of a story. So when you're presenting your work, don't assume that anybody knows what you're already doing. Whoever you are, you're in the middle of a practice somewhere. Your practice might be, I've just graduated from college, or your practice might be, I've spent the last 30 years sculpting from stone, and now I want to make a film. I mean, whatever that is, but your practice is somewhere. It's situated, and the situatedness is before and after that. When you start to explain, when you start to write your application, assume that whoever's sitting there reading your application on the other side is meeting you for the first time, and this is new information to them, and you want to tell a story. So I could use hypothetical, but what I've decided to do is I actually use the successful application in 2021 and just go through what my story was at that time. I had just come off 2 big projects in 2020, both of them based in the UK, both of them things that I won just kind of like through a process of like working in practice with one thing or another. I was kind of stumbling into this gaping hole of, like many artists know, of I don't know what the next thing is, but I really hope that the next thing comes because I still have rent to pay and I have, you know, I need to eat and all the rest of those things to go along with that. So I was kind of seeking things out, and I was awarded a residency in the Leitrim Sculpture Centre to expand some of the research that I had done off the back of those 2 projects. And it represented a good opportunity to just take some of that stuff, build some new artworks and try and figure out what I was going to do. But that kind of, all of that was my story, but I knew that I was going to make work in this space, but like what support I needed to make that really dynamic, to make that a really good exhibition and to really push it forward and work with people that I wouldn't necessarily have had access to. I needed more funding. I needed something from somewhere. And at the time I was a Wicklow based artist working in West Wicklow. And I had this. So there was a track, there was something that happened before these projects that I'd been working on. There was me somewhere in the middle of this. And then there was the residency that was coming up. And I said, okay, well, I need to make these things meet one another. So that was the story that I constructed, and I told that very clear. Oh, I hope it was very clear. I guess it was clear enough that somebody understood it in the application that I wrote. So I went through that background and I said, this is my practice. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm going. And this is what I want to do. And then I repeated that throughout the application. So this is a point I think Ali was getting at as well, with the idea of concreteness, but I think also with the idea of narrative. When you're telling this story, you need to kind of like trust it and believe in it yourself. A really good friend of mine rang me yesterday, actually, who's also applying for an Arts Council award next week, and he asked for advice. It was interesting to get the call because it made me think about this particular thing, and I know that this is something that will probably a lot of people will be going through. Sometimes you might not know what to apply with, but you know that there's something kind of there sort of forming itself in some way. And he had he was asking me, he had two different things that he thought he might apply with. One is a kind of a project that's quite established, that has been going sort of well, but that has sort of lost his kind of heart and his momentum at the minute. And the other is a project that's kind of getting started and it's kicking off a little bit, but it has a lot of momentum with it right now, and it's been going quite well. And he was just asking, like, you know, which direction would I go with if I was going with it? And I said very much the one with the momentum. Not because of the momentum, doesn't matter, but because when he spoke about it, he was super excited. He really, really was so charged about it, and I could hear it. And when you write about something that you're that excited about, that charge will come across too. And it's just there, it's in it, it's in you, and it's in the words. So I would say whatever you apply with, like, you form the narrative around that, but also make sure it's something that you really care about. You're not just trying to tick boxes and answer their questions. Create that story that makes sense to you and is exciting to you, that will also be exciting to the people who are on the panel and who are reviewing this at the end. Because they are artists or arts workers in some way. They recognize what it's like to get rejection letters, and they do want to fund people. Keep that in mind. That's the kind of main message that I was going to try and get across. I'm trying to think, there was something that oh yeah, so but that also comes back to this point about preparing. So make sure, prepare the documents, but also make sure, prepare what it is that you want to apply with. So right now, what we've got like 3.5 weeks left until this deadline comes through. That's lots of time to try and figure out a narrative or a story or what it is that you might want to apply for funding with. But I would also say, like, for me personally, I've definitely never won an award from anything that I applied for last minute. But I also am like, and this might be a pedantry that like is specific to me, but and Ali might speak to this as well when we get into the Q&A, but I also write and rewrite applications. I take quite a lot of time with these things, so I don't just write it once and then send it away. I write it, I read over it, as Ali suggested, I send it to a friend or to a couple of friends. People who understand arts practice generally are the better people to send these things to, and then I get it back and I rewrite it again, and sometimes rewrite the entire thing from scratch, realizing that maybe I wasn't being very clear, or maybe something wasn't quite like was quite out of place or whatever. I know that sounds like a lot of time, but it's also, this is like, you know, these grants are important, but they're not just money, but they're also kind of a recognition that allows you to go on and do something else again afterwards as well. So bear in mind, Wicklow Arts Office's name next to something, then the next time if you apply for an Arts Council Agility Award or a Bursary Award, they see that you've won something from Wicklow Arts Office. It just gives you that little bit more kind of like, again, I use the word momentum. Like, so it's worth it, and it's worth taking time and making sure that you prepare these things, writing and rewriting. So that's kind of it. Stay consistent, prepare the documents, try and keep a narrative that flows through it, and give yourself loads of time. That's the kind of advice. But I really think that Q&A is the more important thing, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of interesting questions coming off the back of this. So I hope that was clear enough. Okay, thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks to both Ali and Shane there. I think that's really insightful and really nice to hear from people who are on the other side of the table. You know, and I suppose just to say as well, we're on that side of the table too. There's many funding awards that we have to apply to, and we don't always get the funding we would wish for. But you know, as Shane says, the ones we find that do get funded are the ones where we've taken the time, we have a whole research process, we really align what we want to do and the guidelines of the funding stream, and we have been quite successful recently on a number of fronts, which is very positive.